Good morning, everyone. My name is Rosa Rosales. I'm the Business Tax Compliance Supervisor for the City of San Diego. Thank you for taking the time from your busy schedule to join us this morning. A quick reminder, Thursday, June 18th is the final webinar for this series, Business 101, so be sure to sign up. Also, all videos can be found on the CMRTA website, but you must be a member to access, so now is the time to join. If you need membership information, you can email us at CMRTA-div4, that's CMRTA-div4@gmail.com, or you can contact your local CMRTA representative. You don't want to miss up on upcoming webinars and trainings. Today we have the legislative update, courtesy of Connor Duckworth, project manager with HDL Companies. Mr. Duckworth has over 10 years' experience working for both state and local municipalities and providing political consulting to candidates on many races and referendums. As the project manager, he is responsible for the development and implementation of business license, tax, and revenue-related products and services. He is a lecturer and mentor to municipalities nationwide and has served as a vice president on multiple division boards along with State Board for the California Municipal Revenue and Tax Association. In addition, Mr. Duckworth is a certified revenue officer. During his experience working at the city level, Mr. Duckworth was instrumental in winning the CMRTA Lighthouse Award of Excellence for creating one of the top business license and revenue programs in the state. Additionally, Mr. Duckworth is elected to a countywide office which governs over 400,000 residents. In his spare time, Mr. Duckworth enjoys traveling the world. He has visited 51 countries and continues to plan his future adventures. Please welcome Connor Duckworth.
Thank you for the introduction, Rosa. Really appreciate that.
You're welcome.
All right, so let's get started. We have a lot of bills that are coming through the pipe right now. And this is a weird time, not just because of all of the COVID issues, but because we're sort of in the waiting period right now. The session is about to commence for this first part of the year, and then they're going to go into recess. So I'll get into that right now. I did put up, if you do want a copy of the slides at the end of the presentation, if you go to your chat box, there is the email address that you can email, CMRTA Division 4, and div is div4 at gmail.com, and that's how you can obtain a copy of the slides if you'd like. The videos, like Rosa mentioned, are going to be published usually a day or so after they come on to the live webinar. They're on the CMRTA page. So if you aren't a CMRTA member yet, you really should. It's a great opportunity at a great organization to be a part of and learn about local revenue and tax. I mean, I've been a part of it for many years, and the knowledge that I've gained from CMRTA is so immense. It's helped me develop in my career. All right. So in case you don't know, Division 4 has been sponsoring the webinar series. We are on webinar number 4 of 5. And if you would like, we do have a LinkedIn page for Division 4. There's a little screenshot in there. And Rosa's been great and been putting a lot of information up on there throughout the last few months. There's a lot more than 16 members now as well, too. There's somewhere in the range of like 50. But please log in and join if you'd like. It's open to anybody in the state that would like to have more information. All right, so here's a question. You don't have to use the chat box for this one, but I do encourage you to use the chat box for any questions that you may have. The chat box can be accessed by going to the bottom of your screen and clicking the button that says chat. Please ask any questions that you might want regarding certain legislation topics, and I will get to those throughout the presentation, as well as some at the end in case you want to hold your questions until the end. So the first question is, are we in year 1 or year 2 of the legislative cycle? We're actually in year 2. So the cycles go in a 2-year span, and they're usually based on election years. So, for example, we're going to have an election in November. So, therefore, the election years are usually year 2. Last year was really not an election year, so that was year 1. A lot of the bills will come into year 1 and happen to most of them won't pass in year 1, and some of them might reoccur in year 2, which we're going to talk about today, some of those bills. And they're going to come back to life, is what the term we use for it in that second year. All right. So June 15th, which was yesterday, was the budget deadline. The budget deadline are for bills that are affecting the upcoming state budget. Now, we had an interesting budget this year. Of course, with COVID, so we came into the year way above budget with a ton of reserves, just like many of you guys out there, and left it with a depleted budget and not much reserves at all, actually zero, and we're in the hole. So Governor Newsom proposed cuts across the board, including salaries, I believe a 10% pay cut for many state agencies, and that ended up getting axed in the state legislature. They said, we're not going to have any cuts. We're not going to have any salary pay cuts as well. We're going to wait for the federal government to essentially bail us out. The federal government has not really bailed anybody out yet, so they are still pending and hoping that the feds will pick that up, and that's why they have passed the budget with that in mind. So we shall see what ends up happening. I'm not quite sure, but it was my own opinion. I would prefer Governor Newsom's trying to save everything and somewhat cut some things across the board and not have to wait and hope that things are going to happen with the federal budget. So we shall see. But anyhow, yesterday was the last day for those bills. So we can see what happens and moves forward. And those just go to the next house. So July 19th is the last day for bills to pass in their own house before summer recess starts. The summer recess starts the end of the week. The legislators are going to go on recess until July 15th or July 13th. So they're going to go back to their home districts and most likely campaign, spend time with their family, things of that nature. So a good note right now is, as we go through the presentation today, if a bill is in a different house of origin, at this point, there's a high chance of passing, meaning that if an assembly bill, if you see at the bottom, AB is assembly bill and SB is Senate bill. If an assembly bill is currently in the Senate or vice versa, that means it's already passed its own house of origin. So if it's in the other house, it's a good chance of passing or at least getting to the governor for him to sign or veto or just let go and the bill to chapter. So July 25th is the last day for a bill to qualify for the November ballot. So any bills that we're going to be voting on, usually those are going to be taxable bills. Anything that raises a tax is, for the most part, going to be on that from the legislature to the November ballot. All right, so I just took this slide from a presentation that I did for a couple of CMRTA divisions last year, but just because this slide is reoccurring again for this year, there are some action items that we talked about if you were attending those meetings of what to look forward to. So this bill has passed, everything is good to go. However, there are some further action items. The Department of Consumer Affairs was told to produce a language or a notice in multiple languages by January 1st, similar to the CASP one. I have not seen it, but I really haven't looked into it as well. If anybody has seen this, please note on the chat box, and I can let some other members know. But like I said, I haven't looked too in depth on it because it's not effective yet. It's going to be effective January 1st of next year. It was a really long, drawn out timeline on this bill, but essentially it is just a rehash of it. It is a business license gender discrimination notice. So like the CASP, you're supposed to hold the language of this bill or of what the state is going to give, similar to the CASP in multiple languages too. So in English, Spanish, Mandarin, Vietnamese, etc. Whatever, I think there's 5 or 6 different languages that have to be, and you have to be able to produce it to the customer if they would ask. Now, this bill essentially says that you cannot charge the same or a different price based on gender. So, for instance, if I were to go to the barber and I were to ask for a buzz cut, and Rosa from San Diego, who did the great introduction today, were to go to the barber and buzz cut her lovely hair, the barber should not have any bias and should not change the cost of the cut because we're both getting a same buzz cut. Now, if Rosa is going to her hairstylist or barber and getting a totally different haircut than I would be, then of course the price could be changed. But any similar cut should be the same. Same thing with dry cleaners. If Rosa goes to her local dry cleaner in San Diego, and I happen to be in San Diego as well, last year at the CMRTA convention, and maybe I wanted to have a dry clean shirt. If I had a long sleeve button down shirt and Rosa also had a long sleeve button down shirt, the price has to be the same. Before, a lot of times the gender-based prices would occur. A female blouse or a female button-down shirt would be at a higher rate than a male button-down shirt. But that can no longer be the case, and they have to be the same cost for that dry cleaning. Same thing with tailors. If Rosa wanted to get a button sewn on her pants, and I wanted to get a button sewn on my pants, it should be the same cost. Now, of course, there's many different things that could, differ in the cost. If the hem wanted to be different, Rosa's hem was maybe a higher hem or a tighter hem than mine, and taking off more of inches or things of that nature, or maybe adding patterns that I wouldn't be adding, those costs would be different because hers would be more intensive labor. So the labor is going to be the same if it's the same type of cost. However, if there's more intensive labor, just like anything else, the cost should be different. So starting 2021, a city, county can increase the business license fee for issuing the notice, but no state reimbursements. So that means that you can actually increase the cost. So if you have a processing fee or an application fee, renewal fee, things of that nature, you can actually add that into your cost to cover issuing the notice. Now, it's not going to be a substantial increase. I mean, it might be $1 or $2 based on the number of pages and the time and effort it takes for you to do it. But the state will not cover any of the costs. There will be no reimbursement through the state, but you can actually add it into your fees at increased cost. So you can do that. All right, now let's go on to some of the new bills that we have. So AB 2843, this is a new fee that is applying to the business license. So we keep having these new fees that the state keeps adding on. I mean, this is year after year. they make our jobs as business license professionals a lot more difficult. So this would require municipality to collect an additional fee for any applicant that would have a local license depending on the number of employees. So this is an employee-based fee. Any employer with fewer than 75 employees, or fewer than 50, I'm sorry, should not be required to pay an additional fee. However, if you have 200 to 99, you shall pay 75. And if you have more than 999, it's 150. Now, they haven't said what the fee is going to be yet for 50 to 200. I would assume, somewhere in the $25 to $50 range. The bill is actually still in committee, so all of the kinks have not been worked out yet for the bill. I'm not sure if it's even going to pass, but it would require the local entity to create a fund entitled Affordable Housing Assistance Fund, in which the fees would be deposited. Now, just like the CASP, the $4 fee, where those fees can only be allocated for certain uses, more of like ADA compliance and for building and inspectors to have their licenses. It's going to be specified purposes, including first-time home buyer programs, vouchers for homeless, funding and subsidizing affordable housing, and rental assistance. So I'm not sure the in-depth of that yet, but if the bill gets moving forward, we're going to be seeing that. And this needs a 2/3 vote to pass, since it is the state's calling it a new tax. So in the both the Assembly and the Senate, if it were to pass, it would need 2/3 of the representatives to vote for that increase. I don't see it moving forward at this time due to the COVID crisis and the hardship that businesses are already facing, especially many of them that have been shut down. So, I mean, but anything could happen. It still could be moving. So keep an eye on this bill. And if it does move quickly, then it might be smart for your city to, if they want to have any acting type measures on the bill, whether to favor the bill or oppose the bill, you and your city can make a difference and submit your favor or your opposition to the bill. If you are looking on how to do that, I do have a little type of article that I wrote recently on how to do that, and some resources, so reach out to me. My email will be at the end as well. All right, AB 2362. So this bill, as you see, is an assembly bill, but the status is in the Senate, meaning that it's already got out of the assembly, it's already passed the assembly. So this bill has legs, and it might be moving forward quicker than we thought it was going to be. So this is involving firearms dealers. So existing law, a firearms dealer has a business license, a valid seller's permit, and a Department of Justice certificate. If this bill is passed, starting July 1st of 2022, the DOJ can impose a fine of $1,000 for the first violation and $3,000 for additional if they don't meet all of those requirements. So right now, there's really no fines or no parameters to enforce it. So this bill is creating enforcement measures for firearms dealers. Now, a few years ago, when we had the ATF come and speak at a couple of our CMRT, I believe a conference and a division meeting, one of the big things that is happening now in the firearms area that they're going to be putting some more legislation on are firearms being created and bullets as well by, ammunition by 3D printers. Now, this is a very hot topic. I haven't seen much legislation on this yet, but you will probably see a lot of it occurring in the next couple of years. Now, people are actually selling the specs and the blueprints of firearms to be printed on 3D printers. So, and what happens if they're printed on a 3D printer? Well, usually they're not licensed. The law enforcement has no way of tracking the firearms of if they've been involved in a crime or if they've been involved in any sort of serious accusations. So that is another big problem that has been occurring as well. Also, they have no serial numbers and they've been sold on the black market. The only good thing so far that's happened with 3D printers is they're not very accurate. They still have a lot of issues with accuracy as far as using the firearm in shooting. So the accuracy is poor. However, like I said, it's still a major issue and a hot topic. So expect to see some laws and some more action being occurred to those people that are using 3D printers to print firearms. Because, like I said, we have laws in place in California where firearms have to be licensed. You have to have serial numbers, and the owners have to go through a thorough background check. And if you print them on a 3D printer, we have no way of finding out anything. So this law, I don't know who is going to be imposing it besides the DOJ, who will be enforcing it. I don't think it will be occurring at the local level, but just know that your local firearms dealers or pawn shops that are using firearms in a resale value will be needed to have business license, seller's permit, and the DOJ certificate if they don't currently have it, which they should. All right, so AB 3284. What is this? So this is still in committee. So I don't know if it's going to be moving. We still have a little bit of time, maybe the next week or so. A lot of times it's a crunch that happens where the legislature might go in at the last minute and have a really late session, and often until midnight to approve some of these bills. And this bill is for short-term rental posting for business licensing, stating that if a municipality is requiring a business license for a short-term rental, they're required to post a tax plus fees for this license, and the following online for public access: the name of the license, the address, and the business license number, and a fine of $1,000 if in violation. So I read through this bill, and I am not a fan of this bill because it is once again putting some legal and regulatory ramifications to business license professionals. It's also in violation of the bill that we are all aware of called AB 2184. And I don't believe the author has been informed and should be informed. I would hope by either CMRTA or by one of our local cities that are on this call or counties that are on this call. The bill is actually asking you to, like we said, have the name of the licensee. So if myself, Connor Duckworth, if I'm renting out a property, I have either my own property that I rent a room out, or I rent out my property when I go out of town or use a secondary home on Airbnb. We all know there's many ways that we can rent things out through Airbnb. So my name, my address, and my business license number would have to be published by the local agency, the city or the county, and available for public access. Well, we know that AB 24 restricts having homes as available to the public for privacy reasons. So if you have your home being published and you rent a room in your home, but it's not published on your local business license area, but it's published on your short-term rental list, that's a problem. So we hope that this is not going to be moving forward. I just got a message from Nick Romo in the League of Cities, and he mentioned this will not be moving forward this year. So thank you, Nick. Appreciate that. So if this bill does have legs and move forward next year, it would be good and well aware to keep this bill at the forefront of AB 2184. And this is, like I said, a violation of that. All right. The hearing is postponed for this human trafficking bill. I don't think this will be moving forward this year as well. I haven't seen any legs, and it doesn't look like it's going to be going anywhere. But just to let you know what this bill is about, this would be including hotels, motels, B&Bs to post a notice relating to victims of slavery and human trafficking. The current law makes it a violation. Um, so it'd be required to short-term rentals as well. Just showing that many of you have been working with local law enforcement and your code enforcement departments regarding inspections for various aspects, and human trafficking is still prominent in many of our cities, unfortunately. And I've dealt with it on my end and seen it, and it's very sad to see in the community. So this would be a posting bill for all of those, but it probably will not be moving forward at this time. AB 3023, it's still in committee. It's a moratorium on rates for emergency and disaster like COVID, or if you want to have a like the fires or an earthquake type thing. It'd be a proclamation of the state declaration of emergency for a period of 30 days after for the owner or operator of a hotel or motel from increasing their rates for 10% or more. Just same thing like price gouging that we have for a variety of our sales and our items that are in the stores, like hand sanitizer was a big one this time around. So it would make it a misdemeanor, and violations would be unfair to competition as well. Um, so I haven't seen this bill moving quickly, but it might still have legs or be brought up at some point. We still have a couple days left, but just know once again, this was out there, and they're thinking about doing things like this. Because we're in a time of emergency, this may be resurrected and moving, or at least thought about and considered in the future. So this bill is regarding TOT and STR lodging rates, specifically STR lodging rates. It did fail the first vote, but it's been reconsidered. I don't know if it's going to be moving anytime soon in the reconsidering. They can say it's been reconsidered, but whether they bring it up or not is up to the committees. It would be requiring a provider, Airbnb, VRBO, et cetera, to show all fees for the STRs. So this would be cleaning, TOT, admin fees, et cetera. Currently, if you've ever used Airbnb, you will see it has a fee or price for the nightly rate. And then after you then go in and accept it, you will see the various fees. This will showcase it right away on the forefront and everything. So any of the fees that are associated, you'll be able to see, and it'll be a fine if those fees are not shown on the website itself. Rent control. This is still in committee as well. This one we have heard about pretty recently, but I don't know if we're going to be having anything further on this. It would prohibit a person from taking any action to foreclose a residential property while stating a local declared state of emergency 15 days after has ended, including but not limited to conducting the sale or the default of it. So this would be foreclosing during COVID time. We're wrapping up this portion of COVID, so I don't know, since it is specified to COVID, if this will be moving forward, because we're slowly exiting that era. All right, so this one is a scheduled hearing, the end of this week. So we will be able to see if you're looking to look at rent control. Senator Weiner is a big, prominent rent control person. He is probably the most active when it includes rent control, rent stabilization, um, affordable housing, and urbanization in mixed use housing and things like that. That's his expertise and his niche in the industry. So most of these bills that are relating to it will be coming from him, or at least having his stamp of approval. Um, this is evictions due to COVID. It would prohibit a person, business, or other entity from evicting tenants of commercial real property, including businesses and nonprofit organizations during eviction. So we've heard of this one too. This is we can't evict anybody, or this would be a moratorium at least of evicting. If you are found to evict somebody during this time, they have put a $2,000 violation for each of the violations for that. And the bill would make it an act of unfair competition, like we've seen for some of the other bills previously we just talked about, an unfair business practice. So we'll see if this bill moves forward. All right, so if you've listened to any of the other legislative updates over the last couple years, you might be familiar with these two bills. I've mentioned these, gosh, for at least the last year and a half. This was a 2-year bill. We found that out last summer. Both AB 31 and AB 66, they are related to exemptions. One is on female hygiene products, the other is on diapers. They have made it out of the Assembly and into the Senate. So as we mentioned earlier, that is a good sign at this point. They have made out of their house of origin and moved into the next house. Now, needless to say, the Senate, if they have any edits to the bill, they will then vote on it and push the bill back to the Assembly for a final vote, if that were be the case in the future. But we'll see if these move forward in the Senate. Um, it's a good idea. We've seen this before. We've heard the both sides say. I believe that the CDTFA was doing a study last I heard of the impact on the taxes for these. So I haven't seen the study yet, but if it has been okay and the state isn't going to be impacted a whole lot on it, I think it might be moving forward. All right, we're going to jump to cannabis banking. This bill has been around for a little bit. We mentioned this earlier in a presentation as well. Now, cannabis banking, this comes up since cannabis has been legalized in California. We know that it's been a really difficult hurdle to go over because the federal government has still seen cannabis as not legalized. However, the state has legalized it. So banking is an issue because federal banks are FDIC insured. But we have been hearing a lot of word lately, of course, of certain privatized banks that are accepting cannabis type businesses, as well as some people that are not accepting the FDIC insured type funds that can utilize this. So this would be to authorize the Cannabis Bureau to share the application, license, and regulatory information, including track and trace, with the financial institutions upon request. And it specifies that a person providing these services does not commit a crime under California law for providing the proof of the services. So this essentially would allow the Bureau to share it and the ability to have it on file and not commit a crime for the information. So we'll see. This is always going to be a tough issue until we actually crack it for cannabis banking. I hope somewhere along the line we can see something in the future, but I don't think this year is really going to happen again. It's going to get put off again just because we have more prominent type measures like COVID and our financial hardship that the state is facing. But this is in the Senate committee, so it does have legs. It does have more time to to look at it. All right, AB 1948, another cannabis one. This would reduce the excise tax of cannabis. Currently, the state excise tax is 15%. It would move it to 11% starting July 1st of 2023. And it would suspend the tax on cultivation July 1st of 2023 as well. So we do know that there's a huge black market out there, and our recent studies were showing that more cannabis was sold on the black market through illegal, non-licensed dispensaries than it was through those going through the proper channels, both with the state and their local municipality. Just because essentially we all know this, but just because a business is opened up in a city or in your local jurisdiction doesn't mean that your local jurisdiction has legalized cannabis or this entity from operating in that jurisdiction. So there's a huge black market, and their state is hoping that the excise reduction will be a good thing. I know at HDL, our folks are also in favor of this because we want the black market to be reduced as much as possible. All right, we have, I believe, one bill on utility users tax. This bill has passed the Assembly. It was a Senate bill, so this is a very high probability to move on to the governor. And this is regarding UUT collection on prepaid phones. The Local Mts Act, we've talked about this in the last couple of years, requires that the legal charges imposed by municipality and prepaid phone services can be collected by a seller. And this will be at the same time of the retail sale. Existing law requires that local charges be collected and paid to the CDTFA pursuant to the fee collection procedures law and be transmitted to the municipality provided. So this bill would extend the operation and identify and make non-substantive charges to eliminate the cross references in the MTS Act, the Prepaid Mobile Telephony Service Collection Act. So essentially, this will say that when the cell phone is going to be sold, like at a Walmart or a Target or any place that sells, I mean, even a local agency like an AT&T, T-Mobile, et cetera, that a prepaid phone, all the taxes will be remitted to the CDTFA and then deposited to the local charges based on municipality provided. I believe it's going to be where the phone has been sold, not like in the case of a sales tax where the phone is the point of sale. For instance, if you buy a car in the city of San Diego, but you live in the city of Anaheim, your tax will go to the city of Anaheim because that's where you reside, not San Diego. So I'm not too privy on that detail, but we will find out once it finally gets out of there. If it's going to be based on the point of sale and the city of origin that it's point of sale at, or the residence of where the prepaid phone is going to be utilized for that UUT. All right, so we all know about AB 5. Those of you that were fortunate to come to the Division 4 meeting in March, right before things got shut down, we had a great attorney and one of the forefront columnists in the United States on law employment acts, especially AB 5, speak. And he was very, very intuitive and we learned a lot on the act. And those of you that attended, I'm sure, got great information and had your questions asked. I know I did for a couple of the entities that I use in my personal life. So we have about 4 bills right now that are currently moving. If you saw my presentation in March for Division 4, we had like a dozen bills, if not more, for the Assembly alone, not just the Senate. The Senate was about the same way for that. So now we're about down to 4 bills. I only really see, if any of these, if I were to put money on it, I would put money on the very first one, AB 1850 by Gonzalez. Why? Because Gonzalez was also the author of AB 5. So we all know AB 5 has had its fair share of headlines in the news, whether you are for or against it. Um, we know that there are a lot of internal type issues with it, and this will hopefully resolve a couple. Um, a couple of them already have been carved out as exemptions, but this will carve out a few more: musicians, insurance inspectors, competition judges, appraisers, masterclass teachers, um, real estate appraisers, freelancers like newspaper and video, and it'll recast referral agencies like inspectors and audits. So um, if you don't know much about the legislature, um, they like to carve out things based on who is a good lobbyist. So these ones, especially newspapers, we've seen a lot of course, articles on them because they don't want to get their jobs taken away. So they had a good lobby firm, and we're the media. So if you are the media, you have a direct outlet uh, to publicize your opinion for this bill. The next bill, AB 2457. A lot of these bills, by the way, have um, really moved on from what they used to be occurring. So I believe these next 3 bills started off as one thing and have molded to a completely different thing. So that happens, especially with bills. If you want your bill to pass and have more legs to it, you might need to tweak it around a little bit. Melendez has a bill. I don't know if this is going to be moving much because Melendez recently won an election in the Inland Empire, um, in San Diego, in North San Diego area, to become a senator now. So this would prohibit an employer from being subject to fines and penalties using an independent contractor if they apply for unemployment benefits if the contractor has provided similar services in the last 5 years. This is a very employment law type bill. So I'm not going to comment too much further on it because I would consult an employment lawyer on this, or even your local legislature. But essentially, this would prohibit an employer from being fined if the person, the independent contractor in this case, has already asked for unemployment benefits in the last 5 years. Like I said, you want to look further on it, research it on your own, and we'll see if it even moves forward. 2489, this would prohibit the ABC test for medical personnel due to state of emergencies. So this doesn't say due to COVID. It just says due to state of emergencies. So this one actually does say COVID, but it might actually move forward without the COVID stature on it. So because of it, um, we know that medical has been a huge impact during this time and will continue, especially if we happen to have any reoccurring type of laws or COVID coming up in the future. So I don't know if this is going to be moving forward because we are on the tail end of this first part about it. But if it does reoccur, expect this to possibly move. The next one is another carve out bill. Psychologists, social workers, marriage and family therapists, um, sa- same type of thing as we mentioned for the first bill, but a carve out for that. So, uh, like I mentioned, if you are in one of these industries that are not carved out, um, maybe you need a better lobbyist. I don't know what to say. It's tough right now, and there's so many people that have their their voice out to be carved out, but to get it to the forefront of the legislature and move on that point is very difficult. So I mentioned we have had a dozen of these bills. We only have three that are left. Um, so AB 868 exempts freelance journalists. Very similar to that other bill. I don't know which will be moving quicker. I would assume Gonzalez, because Gonzalez is a Democrat and Bates is a Republican. And just by the nature of the legislature, whoever is the controlling party usually has an easier chance of moving out. And Gonzalez is the author. So I would assume her bill would move a lot quicker um, than Bates. Dolly or Dahl has a bill exempting geologists, land surveyors, and forestry and pest control. I don't know why pest control is in there. That was a new one that was recently added. This bill was actually just a logging bill and forestry, and it's expanded to that. Um, and Morlock has a bill. It didn't pass the first time, but it has been reconsidered. So we'll see if that moves to exempt uh, the independent contractors by repealing the ABC test uh, until July 1st of 2022. And he has that in there. So this would be all independent contractors essentially repealing the ABC test, which is part of AB5. However, he has this because we are in a state of emergency, or and we're sort of easing out of that, and we still want to revitalize and re-edit AB5 to hash it out. You've seen we've had so many bills already. It's still not a perfect bill, so this will give us about a year and a half more to actually look at it. So we'll see if that's reconsidered and voted on. It did not pass the first time it got voted on. Um, if if a Democrat takes over the bill and looks at it, it might have a better chance of passing. Morlock is Republican, but I'm not sure really. We'll have to wait and see. All right, so I have a couple of our statewide ballot measures. This was as of about a week and a half ago. If anything has been added in the last week and a half, I have not put it on here. Um, but remember, in our one of our first slides, they have until I believe it's the 19th of June to the legislature does to put a ballot measure on. These have most of them have been collected signatures by. Um, I'm not going to get too in depth on them. You can look on the Secretary of State's page for more information. The first one is regarding criminal sentencing, parole, and DNA collection. The next one is a tax on commercial properties. So this one is a prominent one. I will touch on it. Essentially, it's going to, I mentioned Prop 13. It's sort of a split roll and appeal of, or a repeal of Prop 13 for commercial property owners. Um, and it will reassess commercial property owners and their tax to be based on market, not on the old commercial tax rate. So for those of you that might not be too familiar, commercial and residential, if you own a house or you own a commercial building, your property tax is assessed, of course, based on your local districts and your local type of um, occurrences that are in that area, but you have taxes that are Prop 13. Prop 13 states that you are not going to have any increase of taxes as long as you own that property. So people, let's say that you are somebody that's owned the property for 20, 30, 40, 50 years even, you are paying a small rate compared to somebody that bought it in the last year or even the last 5 years ago. So this will be going to the voters. Expect a lot of ads for this. TV, print, you're on radio, same thing. This will be one of the most hotly contested propositions. So I don't know how you feel about it, but what it will happen will be commercial, residential will stay the same at the current time, but commercial will all be reassessed to the current market values. So vote how you like, and we'll see where it goes. Another one is cash bail. We have seen a few of these measures being produced in the last couple years. I know we have one that was done by what's his name? He's up out of the San Bernardino Valley. I believe it is Obernathy. He had one that wanted to look at this. So this will replace a cash bail with risk assessments. So cash bail, we've seen and heard about a lot lately in the news. This will replace it in California with a risk assessment for the suspects awaiting trial. Another one is local rent control. It'll be expanding the government's power of use on rent control. If you want to look for more information on it, Secretary of State's page has that. Property tax transfer. It's a little similar to the one we were just talking about on Prop 13, but it will change how tax assessments are transferred between properties and when they are reset to market value. Market value is, like we mentioned, the current value of Prop 13, not the long-term value of it and the historical value. And finally, the one that you've probably seen some commercials for already. We've been talking about it, CMRTA, a lot, and it has gotten enough signatures. It's an app-based driver to repeal their section of AB 5. So they wanted to carve it out, Uber, Lyft, Grubhub, etc., and their drivers wanted to be exempt from AB 5. They were not in the original bill, so they had enough money. I believe they each put in about $20 million to grant signatures and advertisement for this bill, and they got enough. An interesting thing, I received in my own home a signature gathering measure for this bill for people in my county. I've never really seen this, that they would send it to the home opposed to having somebody go online, but they have enough money that they sent it out to everybody's home if you wanted to sign it, put it on the ballot. So I'm not sure if any of you have seen this as well on your own or in your own mail, but I thought this was interesting. Especially, it came about in March during COVID time when they couldn't gather signatures. So this would carve it out and let them be exempt and listed as independent contractors. So you will see a lot of advertisements on this, especially those to vote to repeal it, because Uber, Lyft, and Grubhub have lots of money. And so a lot of use in the advertisement for it. Once again, please, if you have any questions, use that chat box to utilize it. And if you have questions on any of the bills or any legislation that we might be discussing or thinking about. For those of you that want to see the full text or summaries and history of a bill, LegInfo is the best resource out there because it will have everything. It'll have the summary. It'll have the full text if you like reading the full text and putting your lawyer cap on and your legislative counsel cap on. It'll have the voting history. For instance, if a bill is passed out of one house or the other, where it's at, if it's going to be signed, chaptered, etc. And also a cool thing that I like to see is what parties, cities, agencies, municipalities, um, unions, uh, whoever has been in opposition or in favor of certain bills. So as we mentioned, if CMRTA wishes to get behind a bill and voice their favor or their opposition of a bill, they definitely can do it. You would have to reach out to the vice president. I believe it's the second VP who is in charge of legislation with CMRTA, or even your local division, and they might be able to give you some more insight on that to assist in how the CMRTA can, as an organization, your local division, or you as a city or a county. I happen to work in a city or a couple cities prior. I also worked in the state assembly prior to working in local government. And what ended up happening is, oh, I'm sorry, it's the first VP. I just got some awareness of that. The first VP is in charge of your legislative with CMRTA. And the first VP will be able to help you out. But um, I used to do a couple of these. I wrote some resolutions for our city that I used to work for, and trying to get that passed or get that bill and resolution approved by our council. And sure enough, I looked it up on that ledge info page, and it was there. So you can do it as a local municipal employee as well. If you have any questions related to any legislative information or looking for, you can contact me. There is my information. Also, CMRTA, as mentioned prior, if you wanted to, let me put that up there again. The email to get a hold of the slides. It's CMRTA div 4, the number 4, at gmail.com. If you're looking to get the slides, please reach out to them and they can give it to you. Any last questions in the chat? Waiting another minute or so. All right. Well, I don't see anything on there. So I really appreciate all of your help and everyone that's been contributing to the chat so far, and giving me some updates as I've been discussing a couple of these bills. Don't forget, Thursday we have our final webinar number 5 of the series. It's Business License 101. It's going to be really informative with John Sunuckle of formerly of the city of El Cajon. He is retired now, but I have seen the PowerPoint already. It looks great. Those of you that are experienced, you will still pick up a thing or two. Those of you that are newer to business licensing and interested, you'll pick up a lot. It's a great presentation. Looking forward to seeing you all there. Once again, this presentation will all be available on the CMRTA webpage. Thanks a lot, and hope to see you guys on Thursday.